Number 1. When war doesn't end. War leaves scars, some on the body, others on the land, and some never quite fade. On military bases around the world, the echoes of trauma, violence, and death don't always march off when the last shot is fired. They linger in the dark corners of barracks, whisper through locked bunkers, and move unseen through secure hallways. These are not just tales swapped over late-night beers. These are encounters reported by soldiers, officers, and civilians alike. Footsteps in empty corridors, shadows pacing watchtowers, screams in the silence of a desert training ground. Because the truth is, ghosts don't retire, and on bases built for war, something always seems to stay behind. From cursed Cold War compounds to remote jungle airstrips, this is where duty never ends, and neither does the haunting. These are the 10 most haunted military bases in the world, and the dark secrets they refused to bury. Number 2. Fort George, Nova Scotia, screams from the barracks. Atop a windswept hill in Nova Scotia stands Fort George, a stone sentinel overlooking the town of Halifax. Built to defend Canada from invasion, its thick walls and underground passages once echoed with the footsteps of soldiers during the War of 1812. But according to those who've walked the fort's grounds in the centuries since, those footsteps never really stopped. Visitors speak of a sudden chill sweeping through rooms even on warm summer days. Guides, hardened by years of tourism and repetition, confess they sometimes feel watched, especially in the barracks. There, beneath wooden beams that once sheltered war-weary troops, something stirs. Doors creak open with no breeze. Footsteps pace the floor above when no one is there. And sometimes, just after sunset, you hear it gunfire. Faint, distant, like a skirmish replaying itself in some hidden fold of time. More than one guest has seen a figure in full 19th century uniform, buttons polished, saber at his side vanishing into thin air before they could blink. A woman touring the officers' quarters swore a man walked past her in silence, his boots echoing. When she turned to speak, the corridor was empty. Security cameras once caught a shadowy form drifting across the powder magazine, only to have the footage mysteriously glitch. Staff whisper about the captain, a tall spirit seen near the fort's outer wall, always staring toward the harbor like he's waiting for something or someone that never came. They say he appears most often on foggy nights, his silhouette outlined by the glow of the old gas lanterns. And no one likes closing alone. Too many have felt a tug on their coat, or heard a voice whispering from behind only to find no one there. Some believe the spirits at Fort George are restless because they never saw peace. Trained to fight, stationed in isolation, many died from disease, suicide, or injury far from home and without glory. Their names long forgotten, their stories buried with time. But here, in this cold stone fortress, the past won't stay quiet. Fort George may be a historical site by day, but when the sun sets, it becomes something else. A place where war never ended, and the dead still stand watch. Number 3. RAF East Kirkby, England, the airmen who never left. RAF East Kirkby was once a heartbeat in Britain's defense during World War II, home to Lancaster bombers and the brave men who flew them into the jaws of death. The war is long over, the aircraft grounded, the sirens silenced, but something still moves across the tarmac. By day, East Kirkby is a museum. Families wander through the old control tower, schoolchildren marvel at the restored bombers, and volunteers speak proudly of its past. But when the sun sinks and the fog rolls in over the Lincolnshire fields, the air thickens. The base feels less like a memorial and more like a place still waiting for orders. Visitors report phantom footsteps echoing across the empty hangars, heavy boots pacing in time with drills long abandoned. Tools clatter to the ground with no one in sight. Radios hiss to life, broadcasting nothing but static and the occasional voice. One mechanic claimed he heard a calm British accent repeat coordinates, only to discover the frequency hadn't been connected in years. The runway tells its own story. More than one staff member has glimpsed a figure in a flight suit walking along the old landing strip, only to vanish when approached. He never runs, never hides, just walks, head down, like he's heading to his plane. Some say he's a navigator who never made it back, his final mission suspended in time. In the control tower, the temperature plummets for no reason. Guests have seen frost crawl across windows even in July. Others say they hear whispered countdowns and shouted commands, the last words of a mission gone wrong. A volunteer once fainted after seeing what he described as a man standing at the top of the stairs, blood on his uniform, eyes hollow. When he came to, the room was empty, but the cold remained. No one knows how many men passed through East Kirkby, how many never made it home, how many died mid-air with their names swallowed by smoke. But it's clear not all of them left. RAF East Kirkby is more than a relic. It's a place caught in a loop, where duty never ends and the airmen still stand ready, waiting for a mission that never came. Number 4. Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, America's most haunted army base. Fort Leavenworth is one of the oldest active military installations in the United States. A sprawling base in Kansas known for its discipline, tradition, and the eerie sense that something unseen walks beside you. Founded in 1827, its legacy is carved into American military history, but behind the order and routine lies something far more unsettling. Built to hold soldiers and prisoners alike, Leavenworth's stone walls have witnessed centuries of violence, despair, and death. Hangings once took place in the prison yard, silent and swift. Dozens of lives ended by rope or bullet, often without final words. But according to countless reports, those souls never truly left. Ask anyone stationed at Fort Leavenworth long enough, and they'll mention her, the lady in white. She drifts silently through the old quarters, her face veiled, her dress trailing behind her like smoke. Guards have seen her staring from windows at night, only to vanish when lights flicker on. One soldier claimed he followed her into a corridor that led nowhere and never found her again. But she isn't alone. The headless cavalryman is another legend etched in whispers. He's often seen riding near the old parade grounds, his uniform pristine, his body upright in the saddle but his head completely gone. Some say he was a messenger, beheaded during a frontier skirmish. Others believe he died by friendly fire during a chaotic drill. Whatever the truth, his spirit rides restlessly, as if trying to deliver a message he never got the chance to speak. Then there's the old disciplinary barracks, now decommissioned, but never quiet. Doors slam without warning. Lights flicker violently. Soldiers working night shifts have heard voices coming from locked cells and footsteps pacing in empty hallways. One chaplain refused to re-enter the building after hearing someone whisper scripture back to him from the shadows. Fort Leavenworth doesn't deny its haunted reputation. It can't. Stories. The stories are too many, too consistent, too chilling. For all its regiments, ranks, and records, the base has become something more, a crossroads between the living and the restless dead. A place where justice was swift, punishment final, but peace never guaranteed. Some call it a command center, others a haunted monument. Either way, Fort Leavenworth stands as proof. Not all spirits obey orders. Number 5. Clark Air Base, Philippines. The spirits of war and disease. Once a vital stronghold for American and Filipino forces during World War II and later a strategic hub during the Vietnam War, Clark Air Base has seen more than its share of horror. Bombings, jungle skirmishes, secret operations, it's all written into its bones. But there's another legacy buried beneath the airstrips and hangars, one that whispers through the trees at night, one that still moves through the abandoned hospital. In its final years, Clark was more than just a military outpost. It was a city unto itself with homes, schools, a movie theater, and a massive hospital complex. That hospital, now gutted and silent, is where the fear lingers deepest. During a deadly cholera outbreak in the 1962nd, the wards filled with the sick and the dying. Nurses worked around the clock, bodies were stacked in hallways, and prayers were whispered beneath the buzz of flickering lights. But some say the prayers were never enough. Today, the hospital lies in ruin, but it's far from empty. Explorers brave enough to enter speak of sudden chills, the sound of medical carts wheeling down hallways, and whispers in Tagalog and English coming from vacant rooms. One man claimed he heard a nurse calling out names until he realized the names were of people who died there. Others have felt their hands grabbed by something invisible, a cold pressure that tightens, then vanishes. Screams echo through the lower levels, sharp and human. Some say they belong to wounded soldiers, others to the victims of the outbreak. One American paranormal investigator collapsed while filming in the ICU, claiming a force pressed down on his chest and wouldn't let go. When he woke up, his camera was smashed and deep red marks streaked across his arms. Even outside the hospital, the base feels unsettled. Locals tell of a woman in a nurse's uniform who appears near the airstrip, vanishing into the mist just as quickly. Barracks doors slam without wind. Boots march in formation when no one's there. Clark Air Base is abandoned in name only. War, disease, death, it all lingers, woven into the heat and silence. And some believe the spirits that remain aren't lost. They're waiting for orders, for peace, or perhaps for someone to finally remember them. Number 6. Kadena Air Base, Okinawa, the house that screams. Kadena Air Base is the largest U.S. military installation in the Pacific, a place of jets, strategy, and relentless order. But nestled between its barracks and supply routes sits a house that no one wants to talk about. House 2283, shuttered, silent, left to rot. A place so deeply feared that even hardened service members cross the street to avoid its shadow. From the outside, House 2283 looks like any other on base. Faded paint, rusted hinges, windows clouded with dust. But behind its doors is a history soaked in whispers. According to local legend, a man stationed there murdered his wife and children before taking his own life. The base scrubbed it clean, but the walls, some say, still remember. Reports of screaming inside the empty house began almost immediately after it was vacated. Not distant echoes or creaking wood, but full-throated, soul-ripping screams that made patrolmen freeze mid-step. Military police were dispatched multiple times, only to return pale and silent. One reportedly vomited on the lawn before resigning from base security altogether. Children who lived nearby spoke of ghostly faces peering from the upstairs windows, of toys being dragged across the floor inside, even though the home was padlocked. More than one child told their parents they heard someone knocking at their front door late at night, light, playful taps. When they answered, no one was there. But footprints, small and barefoot, trailed away in the dew. Even attempts to repurpose the building failed. Maintenance crews refused to finish repairs. Tools vanished, lights cut out. One electrician was found unconscious with a head injury, mumbling about voices calling him from the attic. Japanese locals, deeply spiritual and sensitive to such energies, believe the land itself is cursed. Some say House 2283 was built atop a mass grave from the Battle of Okinawa. Others think something older, darker, was disturbed. Eventually, the house was simply left. No demolitions, no explanations, just silence. And yet, even now, late at night, those walking past report sounds coming from inside. Whispers, laughter, something pacing behind the walls. Kadena Air Base runs like a machine, efficient and relentless. But House 2283 remains its one broken cog, a house no one can fix and no one dares claim. Number 7. Fort McNair, Washington, D.C. The ghosts of executed spies. In the shadow of the Capitol, hidden among the monuments and marble facades of Washington, D.C., sits Fort McNair, a quiet, well-guarded military post with a past soaked in secrecy. It was here, in the heat of World War II, that justice was served swiftly and silently. In 1945, 6 Nazi spies captured during Operation Pastorius were brought to Fort McNair, tried in secrecy, and executed by electric chair. No headlines, no last words for the public. Just silence, and something that stayed behind. The execution chamber is long gone, but the energy remains. Guards on night patrols report sudden power surges, lights flickering, radios spitting static, security monitors going dark without warning. One officer swore his walkie-talkie crackled with German whispers, words he didn't understand, until the battery drained completely moments later. There's a stretch of ground near the former gallows that many now refuse to walk alone. It looks like any other patch of lawn, but it hums low and constant, as if the earth remembers voltage and death. Shadowy figures have been seen drifting along the perimeter, uniforms indistinct, movements deliberate, their faces lost to the dark. A technician working overnight claimed he saw a man standing just outside the fence, unmoving. When he turned to alert security, the figure vanished, but the gate alarm tripped anyway. The old cell block has its own stories, lights that won't stay on, doors that creak open at the same time each night, voices low, urgent, impossible to locate, murmuring in languages no one can quite identify. Some say it's the condemned, still pleading for a pardon that never came. Others believe something darker was unleashed in those final moments, something bound to the betrayal and fear that filled the room just before the switch was thrown. Fort McNair is a place of protocol, duty, and silence, but not all ghosts obey orders. Here, in the heart of the nation's capital, are specters born not of war's chaos, but of cold, calculated justice. The kind that leaves no graves, no markers, just shadows near the gallows, and a hum in the wires that never fully stops. Number 8. Devil's Den, Gettysburg Battlefield, Phantom Fighters in Fog. The rocks at Devil's Den don't just sit, they loom. Jagged, ancient, and strangely quiet, they lie scattered across the southern edge of the Gettysburg battlefield like the broken bones of giants. Once a strategic point during the blood-soaked Battle of Gettysburg in 1863, Devil's Den became a graveyard in everything but name. Bodies piled between boulders, blood soaked into the soil, and something stayed behind. Though it's no longer an active military base, Devil's Den still hosts training exercises, commemorations, and ceremonial drills. Soldiers who've marched there speak of an atmosphere unlike any other, thick, heavy, electric, a place that watches you back. Some say the fog comes too fast in the early morning, rolling in low and choking, as if the land itself is trying to remember how it felt to die screaming. There are countless stories. Hikers and reenactors alike have spotted Confederate soldiers crouched behind the rocks, rifles drawn, only for them to vanish when approached. One man followed what he thought was a lost actor in gray uniform, only to realize the figure cast no shadow. Others have heard faint drumming echoing through the trees, slow, steady, rhythmic. No footsteps, no wind, just a drumbeat calling from another time. Cameras glitch here, batteries die, photos come out warped or half missing. A famous legend tells of a photographer who captured a clear image of a Confederate sharpshooter perched between two stones. But when he looked back, no one was there, just silence and the cold press of the wind. Tourists report whispers in the boulders, murmured orders that fade before the words make sense. Some feel touched on the shoulder when standing alone. One woman claimed a hand clamped her wrist hard enough to bruise, yet she was completely alone in the middle of the trail. Devil's Den is history frozen in stone. But the spirits here aren't at rest. They're caught in a loop, fighting a battle that ended centuries ago but refuses to fade. Every rock is a tombstone, every footstep an echo, and when the fog thickens and the drums begin to pound, those who walk this ground are no longer just visitors. They're witnesses to a war that never really ended. Number 9. Montauk Air Force Station, New York. Conspiracies and Creatures. On the far tip of Long Island, hidden behind crumbling fences and overgrown trails, the Montauk Air Force Station sits abandoned, its radar tower looming like a silent sentinel against the Atlantic sky. Officially, the base shut down in 1981. Unofficially, some say it never really did. Montauk isn't just haunted by ghosts, it's haunted by something else, something far stranger. Rumors swirl around what really happened here during the Cold War. The Montauk Project, they call it. Secret experiments, psychic soldiers, time travel, portals to other dimensions. Whispers of children disappearing, men reappearing years older. Some say the base housed a chair that could amplify human thought into reality. Others claim a monstrous being was pulled into our world, then locked deep underground when it refused to leave. Locals speak of strange lights over the tower late at night, long after the base supposedly went dark. Hikers wandering too close report nausea, vertigo, sudden nosebleeds. One man claimed time stuttered, his watch froze, birds stopped mid-flight, and the trees stood utterly still for 10 long, breathless seconds. Then everything snapped back. And then there's the sound. Deep in the earth, past rusted stairwells and sealed steel doors, something growls. Not the whine of old pipes or the moan of shifting concrete, something alive. Guards once stationed at the base told of screams echoing through the tunnels below, followed by a silence so heavy it pressed against your chest. Many believe Montauk became a testing ground for what was too dangerous, too insane, to try elsewhere. They say the energy there is warped, fractured. Psychic investigators describe intense pressure, headaches, blackouts, and sudden flashes of images, machines, experiments, eyes watching through glass. And no matter how many times the government dismisses the stories, they never go away. The place feels wrong. Thick with secrecy, heavy with something unnatural. Not all ghosts wear uniforms or rattle chains. Some haunt reality itself. Today, Montauk is cordoned off, a relic of military ambition, and perhaps something far more disturbing. But those who step too close often come away changed. Not scratched or shaken, but altered, as if they brushed up against something their minds weren't meant to touch. And that's what makes Montauk so terrifying. The possibility that it was never haunted by the dead, but by the consequences of the living. Number 10. Edinburgh Castle Garrison, Scotland. Echoes of the Dungeon. Perched on a crag of volcanic rock, Edinburgh Castle rises like a crown over the Scottish capital, a symbol of strength, history, and defiance. But beneath its ancient stone walls lies a darker truth. For centuries, this was not just a royal fortress, but a military garrison, a prison, and a place where pain was currency and mercy rarely spoken. Some say the dead never left. Others say they never had the chance. The dungeons beneath the castle are cold, narrow, and carved from stone older than memory. Prisoners were chained in darkness, starved, tortured, and forgotten. Their screams, once muffled by the weight of earth and stone, still echo, faint but piercing, when the lights go out. Visitors walking the lower corridors report sudden drops in temperature, even in the height of summer. Tour guides have been shoved without warning. Others refuse to work alone, especially near the old cells where nameless men scratched final words into the walls. One room in particular, the oubliette, is little more than a pit. Its name comes from the French word oublier, meaning to forget, and that's exactly what it was for. Prisoners dropped inside were meant to be erased from history. No food, no light, no escape, just silence and rot. Tourists who peer down into it have reported hearing breathing, or worse, hearing their own name whispered back up to them. Then there's the sensation of being followed, not watched, pursued. Dozens of guests have fled mid-tour, pale and shaken, claiming footsteps behind them that matched their pace exactly. When they stopped, it stopped. When they turned, no one was there. A few have even fainted, saying they felt something pressing against their back, cold, heavy, and furious. The castle's upper levels offer no comfort. A phantom piper, said to have vanished centuries ago while exploring the tunnels beneath the fortress, is still heard playing his final tune. Soft, melancholy, always just around the next corner. And at night, the battlements grow quiet in a way that isn't peaceful, it's expectant, as if something unseen still patrols the walls. Edinburgh Castle stands as a proud monument to Scottish history, but in the cracks between its stories beneath the flags and cannons are the restless dead, and they are not finished being heard. Number 11. Dugway Proving Ground, Utah, America's Area 52. Stretching across nearly 800,000 acres of desolate Utah desert, the Dugway Proving Ground is a place built for secrets. Officially, it's a testing site for chemical and biological defense systems, an isolated fortress where the military prepares for worst-case scenarios. But for those who've served behind its fences, Dugway is something else entirely, a place where science blurs into the unexplainable, a place where the rules of reality occasionally slip. Staff who've worked there speak in low voices, careful not to say too much. It's not just the deadly toxins or high security clearances that unsettle them, it's the things no manual prepares you for. Lights that flicker without power failures, alarms that scream in the dead of night, triggered by nothing. Surveillance footage that cuts out moments before a figure appears just outside the frame. Then there are the creatures. Soldiers have reported seeing strange forms moving along the outer fences, tall, distorted shapes that don't match any known wildlife. One patrol team claimed they found claw marks along a sealed door. Another said they watched something skitter across the desert faster than any animal should move, no footprints, just a static buzz left in the radio. Psychological incidents are frequent but hard to explain. Panic attacks strike seasoned personnel without warning, sudden, overwhelming dread in places they've walked 100 times before. Medics call it stress, but those who felt it say otherwise. It's like being watched by something that isn't quite human. There's a part of Dugway known simply as the grid, a locked-off area few have access to. Rumors say experiments in perception, sound, and neurological manipulation took place there. Others believe something was found in the desert, not made, but uncovered, and whatever it was, it didn't like being disturbed. The base remains active, the tests continue, but the stories persist too, passed between soldiers during night shifts, never written down. Because some things at Dugway aren't classified, they're just unspeakable. This isn't a place of ghosts in the traditional sense. It's worse. It's a place where the boundaries between worlds feel thinner, where science meets something older and far more dangerous. Dugway doesn't just test weapons, it tests fear itself, and sometimes fear wins. Number 12. The haunting cost of war. War leaves more than battle scars. It carves something into the soil, into the walls, into the silence that follows the last command. On military bases where orders were followed, where blood was spilled, where good men waited for peace that never came, the past doesn't always stay buried. These aren't just ghost stories. They're echoes of trauma, fragments of duty, and the residue of lives interrupted. Each base, from the Pacific to the deep American desert, tells the same uneasy truth. The dead don't always move on. And sometimes it's not the fallen who haunt the living, but the choices made in the name of war. The secrets, the silence, the aftermath. Because ghosts aren't always memories. Sometimes they're consequences lingering just beneath the surface, waiting for the next soldier to listen. If this story gripped you, there's more waiting in the shadows. Subscribe for the next dive into the world's darkest places, where history bleeds into horror and the dead are never quite done speaking.